Most people never get fluent, not because they're lazy, but because they're missing just one of 4 key variables. I call it the fluency equation. And if even one part is missing, you'll stay stuck for years. In this video, I'll break down the exact formula step by step and how I've used it to learn 5 languages, so you can start learning faster than 99% of people. You might have heard the way to get fluent is to just speak, bro. And that sounds great, until you realize that you have nothing to say at first. You're like a big store downtown with flashy neon signs, but completely empty shelves. In language learning, the products are your words. Without them, nothing else matters and no amount of speaking is gonna magically make up for it. But here's the thing, most people don't learn enough words and they also don't put any effort into which words to learn. That's why the first variable and the foundation to fluency is your word quantity. And when I say word quantity, I don't just mean the amount of words you know, but the percentage of commonly used words you know. Most people waste lots of time here, including myself. I used to spend tons of hours memorizing every word I could find, just convincing myself that it's gonna be useful someday. Which, maybe it will, but if you keep learning plant names, insects, and obscure nouns, you'll just be a walking dictionary nobody understands. So to avoid this, and to learn vocabulary as effectively as possible, don't rely on what I call all-in-one solutions. Basically, most apps and textbooks that promise to teach you everything about a language in just a few months, all in one place. The issue with these kinds of resources is that instead of helping us master the basics, they have us hopping from animals to job titles all within a week. And that's not very efficient, because even if we want to talk about elephants at some point, it's probably not essential within our first couple of months, I'd assume. So the first step to getting fluent fast is to find some sort of way to encounter common words and to keep seeing them. My preferred method of doing this is through flashcards. That way you can easily pick common words and just recognize them, trying to not obsess over the meaning, but simply see them and move on. Because remember, it's totally okay if something doesn't stick. It's not like we're trying to remember some super secret passcode where if we get one digit wrong, we're just gonna blow up. Increasing our word quantity, it's sort of like we're whispering to our brain like, hello, excuse me sir, this word exists if you want to remember it. It's not like, remember it or else. It's not that big of a deal. Think of it like adding entries to our mental database so that our brain can kind of see them in context later and be like, oh yeah, it's that word. But here's where most people mess up, because just learning a bunch of words and stopping here is not enough. And that's where the second variable comes in. Most people think getting fluent is all about learning more grammar and more words. But it's actually completely backwards. Yeah, there is a learn in language learning, but it's not actually about learning. I'd say it's more so about a new way of thinking and expressing your own thoughts. And the moment you realize that is the moment you'll start improving your so-called word quality. If you ever thought you knew a word, but then saw it in a sentence and been like, I don't really know what it means, then that's a word quality issue. You knew one part of the word, but you weren't really able to feel how it was actually used in real life and in a real sentence. That doesn't come from asking, how do I say this? But rather from asking, what would a native speaker say here? This small distinction often gives you wildly different answers. Because language is unique, so trying to convert one language to another, one translation at a time, is just gonna make you sound like a robot. Just like theory is very helpful for learning the basics when it comes to how to drive, we actually gotta get behind the wheel at some point to get all the knowledge we need. And in language learning, that's not done through flashcards, textbooks, or even your precious little Duolingo streak. These things all help for sure, and they're very useful at increasing our word quantity. But to build real intuition and understand more about what the word means in real life, we need massive amounts of exposure to the language and to those words being used in natural conversations. I'm talking about racking up hundreds, if not thousands of hours listening to native speakers talk in all kinds of topics and all kinds of situations. When you do that, you'll stop asking questions like, how do I say how are you in Japanese? And instead you just realize that Japanese people don't even really say that. They have like a billion ways to kind of contextually mean it, but it depends on if you're speaking to your uncle or your boss, if you're drunk or not, that kind of stuff. Basically, shit you don't see in a textbook. But you can know a ton of words and the context around them and still really struggle, unless you improve on the third variable. I recently had a guy book an online coaching call with me, and he'd been learning Chinese for 3.5 years. He studied every day, he used a mix of resources, he talked to online tutors, and could even hold an hour-long conversation, no problem. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, here's the thing. Even though he had high word quantity and high word quality, he told me that when someone asked him a question in fast Chinese, his brain just couldn't keep up. That's not a grammar problem, that's not a vocabulary problem, and he'd even had plenty of input. That's something I call processing friction, the third variable, and it's holding a lot of language learners back from fluency. You might have heard about comprehensible input, basically watching content that's just slightly above your level. And that's great for building a base in the language. But in my experience, it often backfires, just like it did for my client. After about 20 minutes of talking to him, I realized the mistake. He'd fallen into the common trap of just sticking to what's comfortable, never fully diving into the deep end, and this was really killing his progress. But there's a solution. See, as a language learner, you have to at some point go through what's called an ambiguity phase. Basically, accepting that yes, you are overwhelmed, yes, you don't understand half of what's being said, but yes, you will continue anyways, even if it's hard. So I told him, remove everything that isn't full speed native Chinese or vocabulary specific to your job. No more slow YouTube videos, no more learner content. That might sound intense, and it is, but making the switch will always feel intense until you actually make it. So what was the result? Well, despite his initial struggles, I got an email after just 1 week saying that he actually understood way more than he thought he did. And the week after, someone came up to him and asked him a question in fast Chinese. And what do you know? His brain registered it immediately. See, if all you do is consume slow learner content that's really comfortable for you, you'll go out there and speak, be like, konnichiwa, then someone responds to you back, and you're like, oh shit, there's no slow down button, help me, because understanding full speed native speech is completely different from the slow learner stuff that you're already accustomed to. So at some point, you gotta start training your ears, preferably early, and not just rely on subtitles, but actually get used to the way that natives shorten stuff and use slang and speak very quickly and sometimes slur a little bit. You just gotta be comfortable being uncomfortable in the beginning. But even if you do all this right, the last variable is probably where people struggle the most. I understand, but I can't speak. That's a really common problem and probably the most frustrating one out of them all. I call it productive friction. Just like your processing friction, there's just something stopping you from using the language smoothly like you'd want to do. You're slow to recall, you hesitate when trying to speak, and your pronunciation makes natives squint their eyes like. But what's actually causing this? Well, put simply, it's your word quality and your emotional state. See, you probably know the words already. They're just buried under layers and layers of passivity and pressure. Because most learners make two big mistakes. They don't speak enough, and when they do, it's in high stress situations like trying to speak in front of your Spanish class. No shit, that's gonna be stressful if it's your 5th time speaking. That's completely normal. So what's the fix? Well, a word gets easier to use and to speak the more you hear it, but also the more you use it. So lowering your productive friction is really all about finding the best balance between these two things. I recommend first getting the 3 variables we talked about earlier to a pretty high level and then speak a lot. And also preferably not in front of your Spanish class. Because it's pretty well documented that bad emotions like stress and anxiety really prohibit you from not only recalling things and actually speaking, but they also make it less enjoyable and they'll make you learn less straight up from any activity you do. But once you know a good amount of words, know them well, and you can also understand well, your stress will automatically be way lower because at least you understand stuff and you have some things to recall. On top of that, you'll also have heard how natives pronounce and say things for hundreds if not thousands of hours first, so your pronunciation won't be dog shit the first time because you already know what good language sounds like. So after a while, maybe a few months or so, Find any way of speaking that you enjoy. For you, that might be just talking to yourself to begin with, it might be chatting with ChatGPT, or maybe an online tutor or a language exchange partner. Any way that's low stress and easy to do for you. Just remember that training your speaking skills is both about training your mouth to actually produce those sounds and sort of improve your accent and just learn how to speak, but also to learn how to recall and sort of activate these dormant words that we've acquired from other stages. So, the fluency equation is as follows. Word quantity times word quality divided by processing friction times productive friction. Buster from the edit here. I just realized I didn't mention grammar in the video, but I include that in word quality, since seeing the words in context will naturally help you pick up how they're changed to express different meanings. Alright, check notes. Now, fluency is quite subjective and not really math, but I think viewing language learning like this will give you the framework and the system to reverse engineer any method of learning and also to quickly correct and fix any problem you might encounter. But if you want to learn the basics of any language quickly, you should click the video on screen right here. I'll see you guys there. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep learning.